So I see Rochelle has joined. So we're going to wrap you. Hi, Rochelle.
Hello.
Hello. I'm LeiLani, CEO of Learning Counsel News Media and Research. Glad to have you. We're just going to start wrapping you into the conversation now. You're Director for Virtual Schools and Online Learning from Shelby County.
Yes.
One of our faves. So good. So I'm going to just give you a little framing and have you kick into the conversation here. We've been talking about the model shift and the unbelievable flexibility issues that are now the demand and friction on schools. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't want to go to your school and this is going to be fully online, or I want to be fully online, but only 2 days a week. The rest of the days I want to come physically. Absolutely. And, it's like, I want you to mutate 9 ways to Sunday for me and totally personalize all my learning around me, because equitably I am behind in math and you need to double me up in math, but I'm way ahead in language. So you got to understand me as a kid. And that's hard. We're talking about a logistics nightmare for schools just to survive and not lose students. So what I'm showing you on the screen right now, the most advanced model discussion anywhere in the nation, we call it hybrid high flex. So do a lot of other people, but it would flip structure, right? So I'm just going to have you let it rip, Rochelle. What are your thoughts on what's happening with you? You want to give a little framing around what your role is and kind of what you're seeing right now, and then dig in.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you guys for having me. This is really exciting to be here and to be a part of this conversation. Everything you said, I wish I could amen louder, absolutely. But what we're also seeing in Shelby County schools, and because I know that this is a Tennessee conference, most people are definitely familiar with the demographics in Shelby County. We're having all of that, but also with impoverished urban families that honestly are not really ready for the technology demands, and in many times, even just the physical space of having multiple learners in an environment where they have their own device, a place to actually concentrate and do things. So it's very, very interesting. So I know that schools are having to pivot, but I think this conversation is so much larger, because what I'm finding is we're going to need to reach out to our larger community and see even if we could set up virtual spaces that are easy for learners to get to, so that they can just simply, if you're in a multi-generational household where your bedroom is the living room and you don't have anywhere that you can go with your school issued device because you don't have your own to even learn and pay attention, we're going to need a few hubs that will help us to do that in the community as well. So with so many different pivots going on in places, of course, with digital content, as I came in with the conversation of being around that, with just educators being able to also stay abreast of all of the different educational technology tools and resources that are out there. I know we're all familiar with Miss Jones, who was a dynamic, just fire teacher in the classroom, but not so much virtually as well as in the classroom. So the pivots with the educators, and then just the pivots with how to connect with families who may want this now access, but really are underprepared for it. So lots and lots of fun this year for all of us.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love the way you just looked at that, right? Because that's kind of what we were looking at as learning counsel research when we were talking about a new model. We're like, there's first responder kids, and those kids who own, there's 6 kids in the family and they're living in the living room. They need a place to go. They need like the Starbucks of schooling to sit in, and, it's just their space. And maybe it even does have a coffee and drink bar, and they're in there, but they're overseen. So nobody's pulling anybody's hair and causing a fight, but it's like their home, only a giant homeroom, maybe with those Corel desks, so you have a little privacy and you're working on your own, you know what I mean? But it's got sofas, so you're seeing that too. And I love that you said that, because I really think that the leap to total online is important to people, but they still want that physical docking station, so to speak, and they want some physical stuff. Like we were just talking with Allison before you jumped on, like, kids should have hands-on science labs. they should be able to do other sort of extracurricular activities and, history plays and things where they physically come together. But the purposefulness since the start of the pandemic of why are we together again is in question nationwide. And so Learning Counsel during this whole event tour has been talking about the question of physicality. Why are we doing it? And is it a purposeful physicality, or are we just trying to get back to normal? Because normal kind of went away. What is normal now? So we're redefining that. So I want to jump into another set of questions. I'm going to have you go first, Rochelle, and then come to you, Allison and Matt. Student agency is kind of a big deal right now, because when you're online, you have to run yourself. Even when you're physically in the building, you kind of got to run yourself. But student agency sort of went nuclear during the pandemic. And that's a gift. That's a good thing that kids are learning how to run themselves and get themselves some, motivation. And I'm going to get online now, Mom, and blah, blah, blah. Everybody be quiet behind me. That's a good thing. So why don't you go first to talk about that, Rochelle?
So how interesting. We just had a staff meeting about this as well. In Shelby County Schools, our Memphis Virtual School is an asynchronous model. And so very much we are requiring, that in an absolute sense. And our parents and students are only familiar at this point with the synchronous instruction that we provided district-wide last year during pandemic. And has been quite a bit of shell shock. I think that kids have run circles around us old people in technology for some time now. So I know that their ability to ramp up really quickly is phenomenal. But I think, again, the problem that we're having is the adults on both sides at home and at the school being able, one, to clearly articulate exactly what that looks like and what the expectation is, and then to be able to support students in doing that. I think that one of the things that I'm realizing is no matter how smart or well-intended us educators are, the conversation to make sure that every child that desires this access or is in this virtual environment is ready to support themselves in instruction, again, has to be had with government agencies, community planning, just once again to make sure even the placement I found and been blown away from, suburban myself, like everything is fine, but even the placement of cell towers and strong Wi-Fi to run multiple different devices is something that is so simple, yet something I never even considered. And it's really hard to be independent with my learning when just at a basement level, I'm having technology issues. And so my access and my willingness does not match my ability.
Yeah, and those are equity issue one, right? And hopefully you guys are solving all that. But, even beyond that, there's now this other equity issue, which is maybe you need parent boot camps and bring all the parents in over the summer, right, Rochelle? Let's have a parent boot camp. And then beyond that, this issue of hubbing kids and but we heard yesterday from your Valerie Matthews,
superintendent. Yeah, she's the superintendent.
And you guys are doing really innovative stuff, and I'm super proud of you for how far you've come, and being one-to-one and getting everything out there and having an online option. But I'm going to come back, take you a step above that. But I'm going to go to Allison next. Allison, your thoughts now on student agency, because you had huge growth too. Yeah.
I think I can go a lot of different ways on this. I'm trying to just rein myself in. I think that it really differs. And I think that's the part I struggle with. The reason a majority of our kids are online have nothing to do with COVID. We have a very high population of the reason that they're there is whatever experience they've had at a school before, or whatever they are experiencing in life right now with their social emotional needs, with their need to work because that's where their family is and they need that flexibility with time, or to be able to watch a sibling because mom all of a sudden had to go back to the office, but daycare didn't open up back the same way, any of those pieces. But then we also have that piece of, if my experience wasn't completely positive, then maybe this is my way of not doing. And it's really harder for them to get to us if we're this way. And then we have a group of really compassionate teachers who also want to make sure that they're meeting those needs of those kids.
Yeah.
And when you take on a student body where 75% of them have really high anxiety or social emotional needs, or an environment where possibly they're not supported educationally, and trying to navigate that on their own, it's another lift. And so I can go a lot of different directions on it, but I think the other piece is we try to teach our students we've always tried to teach our students to handle that in one way. You either do a help desk ticket when this is broken, or you go ask your teacher. And the problem is we are immediately in need of 17 different ways to do this. And you've got to get to know the learner to know which way you need to offer that to them. And I think that piece is what's a little harder for us. So we are actually in the process of building courses and building, we have, what's called a virtual intervention meetings on Thursdays. And so if a student's not being successful in one or more classes, they have to go to them. And what they do in those is talk about those best practices. If it's I only have 20 minutes to spend on math, your math grade probably won't come up. If you think about what you did in the building for 45 minutes with a teacher, whether that was talking with the group to understand it, learning from the teacher directly, practicing problems, and you did about 30 minutes of homework a night, I need you to translate that to 75 minutes in your day and to make that happen. But then we also talk about but don't work 12 hours nonstop without a break for yourself and skip lunch, because you really also need to do that piece. So we're trying to take a more individualized approach of, if you think this is where you fit, click this button and it'll take you through these. If you think this is where you're needed, click this button. If you don't know where you're needed, we're going to talk about that on our Thursday sessions, and we're going to help you discover that piece. So we're getting there. We're not there totally, but I do think that there is a sense of freedom that the kids have found but I get to dictate it, and they haven't been in an educational structure that has allowed them to do that before. Some of our kids, their safe space was school. That's where they got their hot meals. That's where they got whatever those needs were. And we're trying to provide those same things in this environment. We're in a very fortunate area where that is not a high percentage of our population, but we do have a high percentage of students who feel the pressure to perform and do better and to push themselves harder than is possible, possibly, to take the most AP classes, to do those things, and finding that balance is really important. So we're trying to come at it from a perspective of, let me teach you those best practices in the online and virtual environment at the same time. So we're putting that into some courses. We're putting that into some digital tools. LeiLani, you just talked about a boot camp for parents over the summer. Literally wrote that down in my notebook, because we have a course for parents, but our parents don't have access to our LMS. So they have to log in next to their kid to even be able to get the tips and tricks that help their student understand what they're doing, and to be able to offer that. So like having them come in person, and maybe giving some work to Matt's department that asks for some guest logins, some things like that would be really beneficial to us. But again, we're trying to be upstream about it and fix the now, which is really conflicting. And so I think that we're trying in the best way we know how. Our bigger struggle is when the student won't come to that, because typically you can go get that kid. And when that kiddo doesn't come to you, how do you also make that work in just this virtual environment, and really show them this is what you need, and it would take that away. And instead, sometimes we're finding that their biggest challenge is the frustration that it builds. And then they're so frustrated, trying to get them to come to the table to problem solve is really difficult too. But we do have some things in place to really try to make it work for themselves.
Yeah, but it is a heavy lift. If you're used to somebody telling you, get on the bus, now do this, now the bell rings, now you go to you're almost like a little automaton by the time you hit the middle school, you're just doing what you're told. And now like, no, you're in charge of yourself. Woohoo! It's a little scary. But I think one thing Rochelle just said about, the hubs needed would also work for parent boot camp.
Yes.
And that kind of thing. All right. So I'm going to call on Matt. Matt, student agency. What are your talking points on this?
Yeah. So looking from the sort of technological CO side of things, I think I see two things. One is very encouraging, which I mentioned in our presentation, that we actually have a student help desk, which we've never had before. No lie, I got a help ticket last year from my daughter from the other room. Like, it didn't come to me, it came through someone else in my department who was like, I think this is your daughter who submitted this. So I walked over and fixed it, which is a great situation. But seeing students who are able to advocate. So I talk to my girls a lot about self-advocacy, right? And I think that piece of the agency is great in terms of sticking up for yourself and saying what you need. The downside to agency right now are the students who just can get lost. And Allison talked a little bit about this. We find out that a kid hadn't done anything in Schoology for 3 weeks because their login didn't work. They didn't tell anyone, right? Like, because they didn't have to do any work for 3 weeks. And so there's two sides to that coin, for sure. I think that I'm keying in on what y'all are talking about with boot camps and stuff. Rochelle talked about the teachers sometimes, the adults sometimes being the problem. I was like, if I let my 9th grader go teach a 3rd grade class, I think she'd be totally flexible and totally open for like all that kind of stuff. It really is the adults who were taught a very specific way to do what they do that we're having a hard time letting go of that. I think the boot camp thing can be flipped and you put the kids in charge of it. And you say, tell the parents what they need to know about your school and how you want to run that. And because I really think that self-advocacy part is a really big push, especially for the kids who are online. But any kid could be online any day, depending on what their situation is and their close contacts or their if they catch something. And I think that self-advocacy has to be a piece that we really teach students going forward to fit in your model, LeiLani, of you've got these these intersections, this auto calendaring and stuff. And part of it is a kid standing up and saying, this is what I need. Right. And I think that having that voice would also be super important with that is they know, as Allison said, they know what they need, how they react, how they need to get their help. I just think right now we don't have that built in. We do have a help desk, which is great, but that's not for everyone. So yeah.
What you're pointing out, I'm a media publisher, news media researcher, but I have a background in software development, right? And everything that you guys have all said, including Rochelle, you've talked about things that you maybe not realize it, but they're huge missing pieces of the technology puzzle that don't exist here in education. And one of them is that hybrid logistics infrastructure to manage above an LMS and above your SSO, the schedule of time and resources. But another one is recommendations engines work, right? Like, why aren't we putting a middleware on top of your repositories of all your digital learning objects with a profile of your students and their parents to auto recommend things and auto ping administrators or the appropriate teacher, like, this kid didn't arrive, like 4 hours later, not 3 weeks later. Hello. So there's a lot of missing algorithmic intent because the systems are just all over the place. And they're, in my mind, analog digital in many respects. I mean, I love LMSs, but they're mostly analog digital, right? I'm going to plunk and plot, and I got to self-navigate all the kids into the right place and all the right things. It's not courseware, but courseware itself is a disparate map that's all over the, planet, right? It's like I got to have 67 coursewares to even get to partial core. This isn't going to work. So coming back to you then on that particular topic, Rochelle, the online teacher load, what are your experiences right now with the load that's on teachers?
So that's something, one of our many growing pains, simply because Memphis Virtual School has an instructional model where all of our teachers are part-time. Yeah. And with that being said, as you can imagine, most, I'd say about 98% of them, we do have a few recent retirees that maybe weren't ready to retire, but COVID kind of pushed them out of the door. But other than those few teachers, most of them are working full time at other schools and then supporting our students instructionally part-time in the afternoons and on weekends. And so just astronomical. The only thing that we are doing at this point, and because I'm so new to this position, I've taken it on only July 1. I don't have data yet that I feel is sufficient enough to know whether or not our efforts are being effective. But we definitely have started a really go hard campaign with trying to hire educators that are either retired or available during the day. I want the mom that might have resigned because she was pregnant and wants to be a stay-at-home mom, but misses teaching and wants to teach a little bit, part-time, or just any other person, the dynamic teacher that maybe had lupus. And so COVID pushed her out and she's not really retired, but she's waiting and paused. I need her. So we've the intervention during the day. And what I'm trying to move toward is to maintain the flexibility of asynchronous learning, but still have so many live supports that you could kind of on demand tap into during the day, that it'll be helpful just to support, especially our younger learners. Like I get the idea of agency, and I don't care if maybe a 4th grade instructor only has 10 kids they're supporting instructionally. We've got to be able to be there right now for those little, hands clicking through the material. So that's one change. And actually, I think I hit on both of them. The other one is just trying to build in some live supports even into this asynchronous model, not only for students, but I need live supports for my parents as well. And what we're trying to do is make it not so much just only about supporting your student, but if you can learn Microsoft Office Suite and Teams and Zoom and just things like that, then now being able for us to say, hey, let me help you with that resume now. And we can put those new skills, or even though they're not real industry certificates, just something that say, hey, you passed our little parent university course and you're proficient, then that may also help in so many intangible ways that aren't directly related to education, but we all know that those things really do matter. So that's where we are. And I know I give broad responses because it seems like one question always overlaps into so many different other areas as well.
Yeah, but that was brilliant. And I love the way that you're thinking like a gig economist. Like people can temporarily or part-time be part of the network and contribute in. Because I really believe all of our research is showing that education itself is moving to a gig economy structure. It's moving to what we call extraliminal, meaning you're borderless. You're a brand in the ether, and you also have physicality, right? Same way Amazon sort of backward engineered itself, and now it has retail stores, right? Like if you think of yourself that way, you're going to be a gig economist. So I love the way you thought about that. All right. So Allison, your thoughts in this area?
Tell me what you specifically asked, because I was really focused on some of Rochelle's ideas.
Oh, were you? Well, you can just key off of those and keep going.
I think that live support piece is where it gets me. So we do offer some of those. And again, it comes back to, but our kids might not get online until 8 p.m. And our live supports are always offered during our traditional setting. We have both full-time and part-time teachers. The full-time teachers are making a huge difference for us. This is our 4th year to run something online. It's been a different thing every year, but something online. And that full-time, just having the buy-in, having the full dedication to it's making the difference. Having full-time students is helping with that as well. Because at the building, even when they're an online student and they're just taking those one-offs, they can go to somebody in the building and get live help immediately. And so I think that that's been our bigger struggle too, is that on demand, the student needs it now and can't move forward without it. So how do we let them move forward and see that success without letting our time barriers and our structure barrier of the structure being traditional not stand in their way? And I think what we have tried to do, We have a math tutor. We have those homeroom teachers that are our full-time teachers that are always available to them during regular hours. I will tell you, most of my teachers are turning and burning and like everything's on fire at all ends all the time because they don't want that student hanging out there. But we are actually looking at a model of, would it be worth it to say these half work daytime, these half work evenings? Would it be worth it to say that this part, the counselor might be half every morning, half every evening. We might switch those days. We have a part-time digital curator librarian who truthfully serves as when the teacher says, I want to be able to do this. LeiLani, you keep talking about those science labs in person. And right now we don't have the opportunity to have kids come in person because that's part of the deal with what we offered this year was that they wouldn't have in-person requirements. They have opportunities, but if it's not a requirement and you still have to have that lab, then if you want it to do this, what can I find online that gives them those same skills in the standard? And then how can we actually provide those same other skills of they worked together, they collaborated, they had to take your data to do this next piece. And if we find a breakdown in that data anywhere, then we have to go back to the step that actually made it break. And how can we make that happen in a virtual environment? And so that is what she spends her day on. She literally says, hey, this teacher asked for this, let me go find this. And she might know nothing about the science activity that they're looking up, but she knows about the tools. We also have an academic dean and an instructional coach that focus on those. I think our bigger struggle right now is they're still learning this environment while they're trying to teach this environment. So I really do think it's the piece of sometimes we put it out there to the kids and the kids are like, well, have you ever tried this? And we feel like we're just dinosaurs of, oh, we never even thought about that. We never saw that. And they might not know the content yet either, but they're like, wouldn't you do something just like it does in this game? And if we could make all of those things come to life, we can make it happen. Like Matt said, they sit around a lot and have these conversations of here's where we need to get. And I often, Kelly Wade and I actually used to share an office when we were both at central office. And literally I'd look up and say, I need something that does this. What do we have? And we would sit and have really fruitful conversations of, ooh, if you need it to do this and we combine that and we do this, and we would really start looking at that structure that way. And I think that that's where we're getting to. The problem is the time constraints. And if we only have, right now our teachers have 2 office hours at minimum a week, even if they're part-time for us. And so if they're off at their building third period, and that's when they teach online, quote unquote, they are available to students every Tuesday and Thursday from 9 to 9:50, because that's what their schedule is at their building. The problem is if that student wasn't available from 9 to 9:50, their complaint of my teacher never helps me is really true. But it's not that she never offered the help. It's that it wasn't accessible to the student. And so we're still trying to work that piece out. And I think if we can convince the district to let us do some hybrid flexibility with teachers and their hours, I think we really could make it more relatable and more fitting to what the kids are looking for. I mean, we have a couple students who are actually in the Olympics. And so they go to competitions, trainings, all of these things on what we would consider an inconvenient time because it's during school.
Right.
But they are on top of their education. They just need the availability of the teacher at times. Those teachers are saying, well, then I'll be available to you. And if we've got that in this one-off situation, then if we could automate it in a way of, instead of it's Calendly and you can only look at 8 to 5, if we could really say, okay, we've got world language support here, we could also have it here. It just might not be your teacher. I don't know that it matters. Like we probably need to tap into that computer lab, that work lab, college type philosophy that they have and that setup to make it work for us. But I think that we could get there.
I think what you can also do, because you are thinking of the logistics of time and space here now, right? Which is exactly what the research has been being done by the Learning Council for the last year. Time blocking within a master calendar. But another thought that we've heard, this came from state of Texas TEA, is that the students who've gone ahead, you require them to also be calendarable to help the students coming behind them.
Oh, nice.
So that's so now you're starting to think like a service gig economy entity that is not within the boundaries of the old time and space logistics of 250 years ago. You're thinking as a digital first entity and arrange service and structure to implement the humanity behind that first thing, right? Like not the reverse, which is I have buildings of people and they're stacked inside boxes and everybody moves along the boxes in a manufacturing line and that's my model. No, you have an online entity of delivery courses and the humans service that. That's a wholly different way of looking at things. So I'm glad you made the comments that you made. Okay, Matt, and then I'm going to do one more round and then we're going to release you guys all back into the wild. Matt, what are your thoughts?
So I'm just going to play off of all of these things. So I have no idea what the original question was. I'm going to tell Allison, I completely agree. I think that one of my rewords that I want to look at from that presentation is the word reflection, because I will talk bad all day long about very specific vendors who publish their help desk hours. I'm like, how dare you 5 o'clock Eastern be done, as I watch my entire team walk out the door, virtually walk out the door at 4:30, right?
Yeah.
We have the same structure. Some of us happen to work every night, and so I catch help tickets as they come in overnight, but that's not technically in my box. So Allison, when you go to HR, let me know, because I think my team also needs a flexible thing that if we have students who don't get online till 9 p.m., we're not helping them at all by all being logged off. And we're not actually helping ourselves by re-logging in that late at night, because all we're doing is burning ourselves out. And so having a more flexible structure, I think, makes a lot of sense. And LeiLani, I was thinking about your gig economy thing, and it got me on this whole different tangent, which is why I spaced out for a second. I can't gig economy my help desk. And this is why I think it's so frustrating to me. I've never thought about this before. The reason is because and I don't mean to be so bad on our vendors, all of our vendors are so complicated. It takes so long to onboard people in our team to every single technology that we use. You couldn't possibly hire someone for a week or even 2 weeks, which makes me ask the question, like, why are they so complicated? Like we have ClassLink, we got Roster Server. Why do I have a help desk? Like it all should just work, right? Like that's the reason we have the SSO. That's why we have SAML connections and LTI integrations through Schoology, through all these different vendors. But they don't work. They just don't. I spend all day answering help tickets and tracking down and troubleshooting why the data that goes in is not the data that's coming out. Or if it's coming out, it's not being accepted, whatever happens to be.
Yeah, do you have a data lake? Do you have a data lake though, Matt? You need your own data lake. That's probably what's happening to you is we need to have a separate conversation.
Okay. Happy to do so. We're getting Who Knew It as a data warehouse coming soon for us, which I think is going to help in terms of at least a piece of what we can do. It doesn't help the vendors. That helps internally with our analytics and our reporting. But literally, as y'all were talking, I was having my own conversation in my head going, why doesn't this work for all these? Like, why do we have so many help desk people? Like, why do we have so many help desk tickets? But I do think, again, that flexibility seems very important to me. Also, LeiLani, just as a parent, I love the idea of a gig economy in education, because not every teacher connects with my kid, right? And the fact that my daughter has this science teacher because someone told her she did, and she has no choice in the matter at all. You know, raising a 14-year-old who, again, I preach self-advocacy to all the time, I feel like she should have choice, right? If that teacher doesn't work for you, maybe we'll find a teacher that does, or maybe we find a different avenue by which you can learn this. But we are still in that box model of somebody in the office made a schedule and decided because of the age you're in, the gender you are, whatever you happen to be, you're going to be in this specific class for an entire year. When that's not how I do things. Like I try to learn things on the side. I have hobbies. I jump around from like this YouTube channel to that YouTube channel to like this Udemy course or Udemy. And I go, why is it like that with our students? So I do see the future. I love the idea, again, of the gig economy, of choice, of auto scheduling, all that kind of stuff. It's just frustrating, as always, in these great conversations, to go back to work in a minute, you know?
Now we got to go back to the drudgery.
Now there's
help
desk tickets, and I know they're sitting there waiting for me, and some of them are Allison's teachers that I'm not helping. You know, that's the piece I got to get over. Yeah, we got to fix that.
I totally understand. Well, we really exposed some of the things that we really want, right? Like all three of you guys on this conversation. So I want to wrap up by just going super positive. Rochelle, your vision of the future, like final comments on the good that's come and where you want the future to be.
I think that everything that's happened has definitely shown us what we can do.
Mhm.
And not only that, but how quickly we can do it, you know? So I think that absolutely it has been a blessing to see schools now know that technology and offering instruction beyond the school walls is okay. Allison, I love what you said. If you have a kid that's in the Olympics or just has some other interest, or even the kids that have told us for decades, hey, I have to work to help the family. I don't want to drop out, but I don't have any other choice. It's shown us, you know what? Beyond the school walls, beyond 3:30, it's okay, guys. We can figure that part out too.
Yeah.
Flexibility and the innovative thinking that's not, I feel like it used to be kind of optional and here's a blue ribbon if you do it, but now everyone has to, and innovation is mandatory. That absolutely is the one of the best things that I think has happened to education in a long time. I know this is not what you asked me, but it just came to mind. I did the coolest kind of icebreaker activity, and I want to share it because I know everybody could use it. They put this diverse room of people in groups by decade. So in order not to make us ladies feel so bad about our age, it was decades from your year of high school graduation.
Yeah.
And so you got into a group of people around your age, and you had to describe in some graphic form what the social scene was like then during your year of graduation, maybe what music or what cool or fashion, just something that you know was going to be very different. And then the common thing is to ask everyone also describe what school was like your year of graduation. It was so interesting to see that fashion and just new cool things that was out. One group talked about how the microwave came about, and they were just blown away, you know. So it was cool to see how different each group's presentation was. But every single group, when they described school, no matter if they were 70 or if they were fresh new baby educators right out of college, when they described school, they described desks in a row. They described teachers being in the front of the class and having to turn in homework and do tests. And it was mind-blowing to see how every other aspect of life was drastically different from decade to decade, but school hadn't remained the same almost for a century. And so with this just pushing us forward, forcing us over the plank, has helped us to see, hey, it was a soft landing spot down there. We were just afraid to jump. And so I think that's great.
Yeah, I love the way you said that. Perfect. All right, Allison, positives.
Yes. First, I want to say to Rochelle's comment, I don't think I didn't write that down, and I'm not stealing that because I am. But also, I remember very vividly when you tell that story in fourth grade doing a worksheet that my mom still has a copy of that says, in 2000, when teachers are robots, what will school look like? And we had to write about this and draw a picture. And there is not it doesn't go very far in between the times that my parents bring this up, show me this piece of paper again and say, I think this is what you're doing. And though you have live teachers, you've also turned education into something that is taught through a robot. And it always mystifies me we only saw that as teachers are never going to have jobs. We only saw that as, oh my gosh, there's never going to be human connection, to we're really making it work using technology and technology becoming that tool. And I think that is our positive. We're seeing technology as the tool and not the teacher. We're seeing the use of technology, and it's focused on what am I trying to teach? Then let me find the right tool. Because a lot of times I think 20 years ago in the classroom, it was, ooh, I just learned about this new tool. Now what can I teach with it? Instead of walking away from conference saying, ooh, I know what to do that. Let me go find a product that helps me do it. And I think that's where we're getting. And I think that we are also, mastering differentiation in a sense that maybe we aren't differentiating the learning in an automated style yet totally, but we are absolutely catering to the different needs of our kids. And we are really making that work. We have, like Rochelle said, if there's a teacher who had to walk away from teaching because she's on maternity leave or because of she's immune compromised, whatever the deal is that she's dealing with, we're making it available to them. We're making it available to students that need it in a different way. And I think that is the piece that keeps me going every day is we're serving a niche of kids and teachers that we weren't serving in a different way. And we're making it happen. It's a bumpy road for sure, but we're making it happen. And Matt brought up that in-person meeting that we had a couple of weeks ago with our faculty that was resoundingly successful. And we really don't think we could have done it without it being in person, but it was something different to my teachers. So being on Zoom is not different. And so us doing that in person and having that connection and talking about, gosh, I miss this, but now it's let me see that I have that same support structure. Maybe I can't walk next door and tell you what happened in second period, but I can absolutely reach out, text somebody, do this, and have somebody who gets it and can talk back to me and understand where I'm coming from. We were able to build that. And I think being able to build that for students right now and the workforce that they're going to go into is preparing them on a very different level that will make them so much more compatible with the world that they live in and be able to see different opportunities of what if we think about it this way? Because I do think we're teaching our kids how to think and not just master the actual standards, but really that self-advocacy that they're learning, that ability to make their own time and schedule and structure work for them and really understand themselves well enough to say, I do have to put down the video games at this time because I do have to do school and get some self-discipline out of that. When we built it in for them before, I think is definitely a positive that's going to come out of all of this.
Good. Excellent. All right, Matt, final comments.
Yeah, so I echo all this stuff, but Allison, I do want to say, I think I speak for everyone when I say, when you talked about your fourth grade worksheet, I thought you were going to say your mom did the same worksheet. Like that, I think everyone thought that's where the story was going to go. She pulled out hers and she pulled out yours, because that's really, to Rochelle's point, how we've been doing this for so long. Again, to echo, I think to me, the self-advocacy piece, the odd thing for me that's positive about this has been, for a lot of adults, having to lean on the technology expertise of students, where we often saw that as a scary thing and as a threat. We have an entire district of first graders who can log themselves into their Chromebook. That never has happened before, because we used to spend all of kindergarten trying to teach them how to log in. They'd forget it during the summer. We'd have to teach them all again in first grade. Now those kindergartners, they learned last year how to log themselves in, and they're ahead of every single game, which I find fascinating. And I think as adults, we've got teachers who are saying, again, we're scared of the technology, but also like, we need this kids to be tech smart. And I think that we're learning how tech smart that they are, which is really great. So I view that as a big positive. I think as well, all the stuff that's been mentioned before about, the students having agency and as we move towards, again, breaking the mold, and maybe COVID is viewed as the sort of chasm between old and new. We'll see how that all plays out. But I think in our district, and I'm sure in all districts, but in our district specifically, the conversations we used to have, again, about Naperville, or again, about what do we want to look like in 5 years, those conversations have radically changed to look what we can do. And to Rochelle's point, we have proven we can do big things in a quick way. Again, I mentioned this before, going from a small one-to-one pilot to 40,000 Chromebooks out the door. Nobody thought that was possible, nor did we think it was a good idea. And that soft landing, it wasn't always soft, but looking back, we go, we did it, we survived it, and we're here. I think there's a lot of positives. I think there's going to be a lot of need to listen. I think the students need to have their voice, the teachers need to have their voice, the districts need to have their voice on the technology side, keeping the pressure, pushing us to a direction in which the Learning Council talks about, which is student choice, all those intersections, that kind of stuff. And I think the listening that y'all are doing is very important. I just need us all to be listening, right? We all have a lot of good stuff to say. So
yeah,
I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm excited too. Get ready for our national gathering later this year, because we're going to be reporting on everything we learned from the most recent survey that we're just finishing off now, really explosive data coming out. Want to thank all of you guys, Allison, Matt, Rochelle. So nice to meet you, and you're already super duper awesome, and in your new role there. And I'm looking forward to getting to know you more. Want to thank our sponsors, ClassLink, Randa, D2L, VitalSource, and Learning.com. And thank you guys for joining us. Until next time, when we roll back through, might be physical next year. We don't know yet. Might be again a virtual event, but we will roll back through Nashville. Love you guys. And thank you for doing the hard work that you've done for all of those kids out in Tennessee, and super proud of you. And I'll release you back into the wild. Thanks everyone for attending, and goodbye for now.